My name's Dr. Milliner. I am representing the entire faculty, and I'm welcoming you to the classroom and to Wheaton. When you look at our new logo with the one book representing the Bible and the other book representing every imaginable book, all human learning, bringing the two together, you might think to yourself, gosh, I've chosen a peculiar place. This is not where my friends decided to go. Other schools wouldn't try to bring those two together. Is it strange? It's not strange. How do you think these places got started? Harvard, Princeton, Yale? Exact same mission. To bring faith and learning together. We're just keeping it going here at Wheaton. How do you think these places got started? 1,000 years ago. Oxford, Paris, Bologna, the earliest universities in the West. Same mission. To bring faith and learning together. To not just stick with faith, but to use the Bible to illuminate everything. That is what we are about. As one emeritus professor put it, Mark Knoll, a historian, for believers to be studying created things is to be studying the works of Christ. Not just to be studying the Bible is to study the works of Christ. Everything. Geology, astronomy, physics. It's the work of Jesus because he's the one through whom all things were made. So this is quite normal, and it's abnormal to forget it. But if you really want to get to the bedrock of what Christian learning is about, the kind of thing we pursue here, you can't just go to Europe. You got to go to Africa. That's where it really launched, in the pagan city of Alexandria. Named after Alexander the Great. He named it after himself. I would have called it Millineropolis, but nevertheless, I didn't get to do it. So in this town, beautifully recreated by Assassin's Creed Origins, the video game gang, but what they can't give you in that video game is what we're going to give you here. And that is the ethos, the spirit of Alexandria, because those Christians, it was still then an illegal religion, emerged into this pagan city of learning with the great library of Alexandria containing all human learning. They learned about this thing called paideia. And it wasn't just head knowledge, it was the full education, enculturation, and civilization of the whole person. And they saw civilized, cultured non-Christians who conducted themselves with such virtue. And they realized, we better have the liberal arts. We better have paideia as well. That's where it began. In order to compete, in order to convince a learned city, Christian liberal arts took root here. They couldn't afford a university. They couldn't afford a fancy place like Wheaton. And so they met in a little catechetical school. Catechesis is the echoing of Christian faith, echo over and over again. And it's people like Pantaenus, Clement of Alexandria, and Origen who led that school. And you know what? Women were allowed. You might not be allowed at the pagan schools if you were female, but you were allowed in this one. And they taught how all learning comes together under the personage of Jesus Christ. As one of the students of Origen put it, Gregory, the miracle worker, he introduced us to all schools of thought, that is, my professor Origen, and he was determined that we should be ignorant of no type of Greek, that is, non-Christian doctrine. When an ancient thought was true, it belonged to us. That is bracing. That is challenging. There is an urgency when you come here because there's nothing out there that doesn't belong in here under the lordship of Jesus. That's what we're about here. Now you might say, well, were they like the pagans? Did they act like them too? Absolutely not. It doesn't mean that all behavior was allowed. They had codes of conduct anchored in Judaism and Christianity that differentiated them. And we've got that here too, the community covenant. And it's not just an add-on, it's integral to who we are. Because who we are as people, paideia, the entirety of who we are, not just learning, but behavior as well. What's amazing about Alexandria is that a symbol emerged for this early school of liberal arts, and echoing the fact that women were allowed, the symbol is a woman, St. Catherine of Alexandria. If you went to the Getty Museum in LA, you would see this beautiful image of her. It's about this size in the original. It's stunning. And I wish I could tell you the entire story of the great Catherine of Alexandria, but I can only afford in the time I have to tell you two. And the first is this. She mastered all the liberal arts. She was a woman of privilege, and she deployed that privilege for good and for Christ. And the emperor was really upset to see this privileged woman who had all of this learning, and so he sent 50 of his best philosophers to defeat her in debate and bring her back into the pagan fold. And she defeated them all. She mastered them. She overcame them with arguments because she was so intelligent. And so what happened was the emperor's philosophers converted to Christianity, and there they are being burned alive. I know it's a sad ending to the story, but nevertheless, it reminds us that there are places all over the world right now where that will happen to you if you believe in the Lord Jesus Christ as we do here. We cannot take that privilege for granted. Another story of Catherine of Alexandria is when they couldn't shut her up, they shut her in. They threw her in prison, and then they broke out this torture device specially designed for her that's now known as Catherine's wheel. There it is. It has points on it, and they strapped her to it and sent her around and around. And that's what classes are like at Wheaton. Not really. They're not that bad. But nevertheless, we will challenge you in that way. I'm not torturing you, but we are going to push you. And we ask you to be willing to receive that, to push yourself into realms of learning that you might not want to go to, but nevertheless, you'll find Jesus there if you follow us. And you might lead us into new paths of learning as well, because nothing's out of bounds when Christ is Lord. And so there she is being tortured on the wheel. And what I want to use that as an image of the pressure that liberal arts education can be. As Ruth Simmons, the first black president of any Ivy League university, put it, the collision of views and ideologies is the DNA of academic enterprise. And so we are going to disagree at times. And you know what? That's okay. Because we have something here that holds us together nonetheless. Even when we don't quite know how these two books go together. We know that Christ holds us together. We are one of the campuses where disagreement is still allowed. Some no longer permit that, but here we can do it. May we be a place where disagreement can happen in a civil manner in discussion in classrooms. But there is one thing I didn't tell you, is that in the city of Alexandria, something awful happened. As one chronicler put it, out of the blue came this disease, a thing more terrifying to them than any terror. And it was a whopper, and it annihilated parts of the population. And you know what it did? It shut down the church, and it shut down the Catechetical School of Alexandria. No, it didn't. They kept going. They kept going through the plague, and as the bishop of Alexandria, who gives us an account of this plague that hit the city, puts it, the plague was a schooling and a testing for the school of Alexandria. Christians showed unbounded love and loyalty. The pagans took off. But Christians, because they knew that death was defeated in Jesus, they never spared themselves and thought only of one another, cheerfully accepting their pains. And so, as we conclude and look into this semester ahead of us with its unique challenges, COVID's not going to stop us. It's going to be an interesting semester, but it might be the best one you've had because of the challenges that are ahead of us. Welcome to Wheaton. We look forward to seeing you in class.